What's the most underrated marker of true health in your eyes?
I think the most underrated marker of true health is probably sense of self and a restful sleep pattern. The difficulties with sleep are epidemic from a standpoint of all of the energies that we're exposed to that we don't see and we don't recognize, as well as our own preoccupation with engaging in life-solving problems.
Welcome, Dr. Chris Renna, to Rooted in Wellness. I'm so happy that you're here today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Before we get started, I want you to know that this podcast is all about ancient wisdom in our modern day world and really how we can support our listeners in becoming more rooted. That's rooted in themselves, in their health, and their happiness, but also in this inner wisdom that I believe that we all have to heal. So I'd love to ask you, do you have a ritual or two that you find helps you feel more rooted in who you are?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I have a very long-standing first morning and last of the day expression of gratitude, a review of all the things for which I am grateful. I have the privilege of taking care of very successful people at times, and their mind is always very active and engaged. And so sometimes it makes it difficult for them to go to sleep. And one of the pieces of advice that I will give them is when you close your eyes at night, tell your brain that you want to think of everything for which you are grateful, and then just start making a list. And I'll bet you after you get to number 34 or 35,
Yeah.
you're going to be asleep. So that is how I awaken each day, and it's also how I end each day.
Yeah, it's really powerful that we needed, we were waiting for scientific studies to prove the power of gratitude, right? When we all just have to practice feeling gratitude, we can feel the difference in the moment. So I love that you mentioned that. And so, like a reason why I asked this question to begin with is I really want to debunk what it takes to be healthy in our modern day world. And every single time the expert sitting in that seat says something that's actually free to practice for all of us. So on the flip side, having gone through this healing journey and obviously being the founder of everything that you do today with Lifespan Clinics, what causes you to feel uprooted? I can imagine you have a really hectic schedule sometimes or demands. Do you notice when you drift and you feel uprooted?
The demands are somewhat of a bond or tie to focus and concentration. So I don't drift from a standpoint of moving away from it. I find that it's much more gratifying and also effective to just stay in it. But I will tell you, today included, that sometimes there are 3 or 4 people in the same 15-minute period who want, need, or are interested in something. And in my effort to respond to all of them, I'm fortunate that I have other people helping me, and they help. They amplify or multiply my presence. But it does bother me, that I can't get to this guy because I have this. It's an act of conscience for me. I want to give everybody the same great attention all the time. And of course, you can only give one person your attention at a time.
Yeah. Where's the village, right?
Yeah.
You created the village around you. And I understand exactly what you're saying. And I think that's a true testament to who you are and your intention for what you're building. So you're the founder of Lifespan Medicine. I would say that you're one of the pioneers in this world of anti-aging and longevity medicine. And when I found you years ago, something that I love that you said is wellness is making up for where medicine is lacking. And I thought, what a beautiful concept, what a beautiful lens to look at what wellness is doing, as opposed to, the criticism of what the Western world in medicine is versus what the wellness industry is trying to do. We can really merge the two together, as you've done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to do that. And The primary reason is something that we're all aware of, and that is that we're all vulnerable. And we want to steel ourselves against those vulnerabilities. We want to protect ourselves from those vulnerabilities by the very behaviors that we follow, the actions that we take each day. But we have to be practical and realistic, and in that we know that at times we're going to have a problem.
Mhm.
The earlier we detect that problem, the easier it will be to deal with it and resolve it. So in that sense, we do have to merge the worlds of wellness and conventional medicine.
That's so good. We're going to dive deeper into that. Something new that we're doing is we're going to jump right into some rapid fire questions to see what your response is. That will take us into the deeper dive of what wellness actually means. I'd love to know from you, what's the most underrated marker of true health in your eyes?
I think the most underrated marker of true health is probably um, sense of self um,
Mm.
and a restful sleep pattern.
Yes.
The difficulties with sleep are epidemic, from a standpoint of all of the energies that we're exposed to that we don't see and we don't recognize, but that are there, as well as our own preoccupation with engaging in life-solving problems. I mentioned earlier the gratitude meditation at bedtime is a good way to kind of disengage. But some people who are more centered, some people who have more balance in their autonomic nervous system, um, they just naturally fall asleep, and they're healthy enough to stay asleep until they awaken in the morning. And I think that's probably one of the questions that is less often asked or less often appreciated.
Oh, I love that response. I don't think I've ever heard someone, as a first answer, call on your sense of self. Even saying those words causes almost like a sigh or an exhale, because there's a knowing that you've got a foundation that's really strong. So I love that you brought that up. And in relation to that sense of rest, I'm curious, is there an ancient practice that you think modern medicine still underestimates? Gratitude could be one of them. Is there another one?
Oh yeah. I think, breathing exercises. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we all ignore the very things that anchor us to life, and the things that, unfortunately we'll someday not be able to ignore. Uh,
Mhm.
Breath is life. And I can bring us all back to some facts, that no one feels comfortable in the room after a woman delivers a child until we hear the child cry, right?
Mhm.
And it's the child's first breath that we hear them exhale. And then we think, another life has joined us. Oh, we succeeded. This is wonderful. And that is a perfect example of our breath and importance of our breath throughout our lifetime. So I think the ancient practice that most of us overlook that would give us a lot of self-control, and a lot of reward, is paying attention to our breath and then practicing breath control.
That's so true. It's funny, everything that we know about it today, we still don't have any modalities set up within our societal structures or work structures to remind us to breathe. Hey?
Yeah,
Hopefully
or
that will change.
even to recognize that we're breathing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure our audience took a sigh or a deep breath as you said that. On the flip side of that, wellness is becoming very complicated. Would you say that the tech that's coming out, is there any type of longevity tech that you are excited about?
Yes, and I think if I loosen the term, and if tech defines only computer or device experiences, if I can broaden that out, red light therapy and um, PEMF therapy, Those are tech advances. You could say that hyperbaric oxygen has been around for a very long time, but the sophistication of the hyperbaric oxygen chambers to which we have access now is also an advance of tech. But what I think you might be saying, or what I think your group might be anticipating, is the obvious answer, and that is that our mind has a huge expanse, and we explore very little of it, and we're conditioned by life demands to remain within a very small area of our mind, our thought processes, our knowledge, and our applications of those. But what we have done as a race is developed a mind that is somewhat limitless in terms of how much expanse it can appreciate at one time. And it is, of course, the most exciting two letters in our alphabet today are A and I.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about A and I from a standpoint of helping each of us become aware of information that it would take us much longer and much more effort to know. And I don't think that AI is going to be the Oracle of Delphi. I don't think it's going to be able to think and reason and give us thoughtful, reasoned answers. I think it's just going to give us information. But if we can use that information, we can come up with reasoned answers. And that's how I think we'll collaborate with AI. And I'm very excited to begin.
Oh, I'm so with you on that. Yeah, going back to what you said around your uprootedness of not being able to touch all of the people who need you at the same time. This is where I see AI being a gift in the coaching and the access to people who can get your wisdom and knowledge. But you're right. If it's another form of tech where people are outsourcing their health and their knowledge of and capacity to heal, then things will go sideways again. So let's keep our fingers crossed and manifest all the things for good. When I think about the state of wellness today, more often than not, the people that start to work with me, and perhaps the people who walk into lifespan clinics, these are people who are doing everything right. They're focusing on their diet and sleep. Maybe they're using a wearable, they're working out, but they're still feeling off. So I'm curious, for the people who walk into lifespan clinics saying those words, where do you begin to uncover what's actually happening?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. And it raises a subject to which we're all, vulnerable. And that is, do we really know the right information? We think we're eating the right foods. We think we're doing the right exercise routines and focusing on the right things. We think our sleep process is okay. We're managing our stresses and, trying our best to minimize them. But what can laboratory science and an experienced person tell us that we don't know about? What are the secrets hiding in plain sight that we can't see? And that's what someone who walks into your clinic or someone who walks into my clinic, that's the benefit that they're going to get. We're going to listen to them very carefully and apply what they're telling us to our experience to pick out the things that they could do or not do that will help them be even healthier. And I have, the privilege of laboratory technology and imaging studies. So I can do those tests and come back to them and say, you thought that whole grain bread was good for you. And I have now found out that whole grain bread contains an inflammatory agent that every time you eat is going to trigger an immune response. And you're not going to identify that immune response as being the bread you just ate, because that was healthy in your mind, looked healthy, package said it was healthy, not healthy for you. it's wonderful, that you appreciate dairy products. But you know what? I've done a blood test and I've found out that dairy products are very difficult for you to process. So it may be better for you to only take raw dairy or goat dairy as opposed to cow dairy. Avoid the pasture. So it's that type of application and utilization of technical abilities, as well as the experienced mind.
Mhm.
I've had the privilege of listening to people tell me about themselves for 45 years. And, I would have a difficult time counting the number of people who I've counseled on that basis. And it's not that we're all subject to the same problems at all.
Mhm.
It is that we experience very similar problems in our own unique way.
Mhm.
And that's where I think, you and I as practitioners, you and I in our experience can really offer people value, is with the information and insight that they can't gain by looking at themselves or by reading.
I have to tell you about my latest obsession, IM8. This is not your average supplement company. IM8 was born from a collaboration from top scientists, medical experts, and even David Beckham. They created a line of products that take a holistic, science-backed approach to health, and I am hooked. Let's start with their daily essentials drink. This supplement is packed with 92 premium ingredients, including clinical doses of things like CoQ10 for heart health, MSM for joints and muscles. It's basically like getting all of your daily nutrition in one delicious scoop. I love mixing it into a smoothie. It has this great chocolatey berry flavor that I look forward to every day. Plus, it gives me sustained energy without any jitters or crash. They also have a daily longevity capsule that supports healthy aging at the cellular level. It has ingredients that help with DNA repair, clearing out damaged cells, and it boosts mitochondrial function as well. I've been taking it consistently, and I can definitely feel a difference in my mental sharpness and my overall vitality. What I love about IM8 is their commitment to quality. Every ingredient is meticulously sourced, non-GMO, and free from any harmful additives. They use advanced technologies like liposomal delivery to make sure that your body is actually absorbing the nutrients. And as a pending B Corp, they prioritize sustainability and ethical practices. I can't recommend IM8 enough. It has simplified my supplement routine without compromising on effectiveness. Head over to im8health.com and use code MONASharma10 for 10% off your first order. That's im8health.com, code MONASharma10. Trust me, your cells will thank you. I feel like I'm becoming a better detective over the years. Even with the data, a lot of the time we get these points of data and a lot of people will still report lingering symptoms despite knowing. And this is where, as you said, you and I have to do our investigative work and really understand who they are constitutionally and what's happening in that season of life. And you've been talking about personalized healthcare far before it was a trend. And I really hope that the future of healthcare is a personalized approach. And the aspect that I really admire about you is you talk about medicine that treats disease versus medicine that creates health. And you said that the traditional system is actually designed to manage disease, not create health.
Correct.
So, what are the biggest blind spots that you would say exist in conventional medicine? And how does lifespan find those gaps?
Oh, well, if I'm answering the question as you're asking it, the biggest gaps in conventional medicine is its complete absence of concern or interest in lifestyle. Um, Very seldom we go to our doctor with a complaint or we go to our doctor for a specific checkup. Very seldom are we asked about what we ate, or how we slept, or how much we move around. So many of us are paid to sit. So many of us are employed to sit through our lifetime. And then we're fatigued by the mental processes that are put upon us. We go home and rest by sitting. It's about, and which of your doctors is it going to be? Your internal medicine specialist, or your cardiologist, or your gynecologist, or your dermatologist? Have any of them asked you about eating, exercising, sleeping? Have any of them asked about your perspective, your view of life? The questions you've asked me. Have any of them said, "Hey, have you ever thought about breath control in calming your nervous system and reducing your anxiety?" No. Um, Conventional medicine is a game of name that disease, know that prescription.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. We're training tens of thousands of doctors to name the disease and know the prescription. And then we're testing them to make sure that they know the names of the disease and they know what prescription to tie to it. And then we're going out and creating a standard of care in the community where, as long as you're able to do that, the rest of us are not going to criticize you. And you won't be held accountable. And name that disease, know that prescription has nothing to do with health, well-being. We call our system healthcare. It's not about health. It's not about care.
Mm-hmm.
We should
Yeah.
call the system medical management.
Yeah. Symptom management.
Symptom
Yeah.
management.
When I was given my beta blocker medication, the doctor really just wanted to know, how much alcohol are you drinking? Are you doing drugs? And there was no investigation on my emotional well-being, to your point, my sense of self, what was happening in my life at that time. And, I think that's really what drove me into this line of work, so that I could really kind of be an advocate for standing up for yourself and understanding your constitution and feeling like you have a sense of power when you go into a medical office, so that your doctor should ultimately be your partner in healing, right? And
Absolutely.
there's a time and a place for the prescriptions and the surgeries and stuff like that. But again, it's that personalization that's missing, because no two patients are going to age the same way, even if they live in the same area, right? So how do you build a personalized longevity plan? And what do you think data points are most important to look at? If someone's hearing this conversation and they really are interested in the idea of personalization, maybe the question is, what types of panels do you think are really important?
Sure. Thank you for asking that question. It was through the 1990s. There were a lot of laboratories that were promoting antibody-related food sensitivity panels,
Hmm.
and it was very clear that the science said, "Hey, if you have high levels of this antibody, you're probably sensitive to it. In other words, this food is probably triggering your immune system to make this antibody, and that's why you have these high levels." What they didn't say, which was in the small print, is you might also have these antibodies if you're eating this food very often.
Hmm.
So we would run these antibody lab panels on people, and we would see that they were initially sensitive to wheat and to dairy products and to soy and to peanut. And we would take wheat, soy, dairy products, and peanut out of their diet. They would feel much better for a period of time. Then they would start to feel poorly again, and they would come back after 3 months or 6 months. And we'd do the panel again, and it would tell us that they were now sensitive to the foods that they had exchanged for their wheat, dairy, and soy and peanut products. So it was what I realized is that the laboratories have figured out a great system here, where I'm going to have to keep running this lab every 4 months on people. So this customer is going to pay them 3 times a year. They're going to think I'm okay with this because they're going to pay me to run the lab test. So we're all going to be paid 3 times a year for information that isn't really helpful. In the late 1990s or early 2000s, this father-son team of naturopaths wrote a book called Eat Right for Your Type.
Yes, I remember.
And when I saw that Eat Right for Your Type book, I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting chemistry. And I looked in the area of gastrointestinal medicine, and there was nothing about it. It was all in the immunology medicine. So I looked into this, and it was all about something called lectin chemistry, which is how are you digesting your food, and are you fully digesting it? Otherwise, if you don't fully digest it, it's going to trigger an immune response. And you could do blood tests that would tell a person within about 15% accuracy. So you'd be wrong 1 out of 7 times, which is not great, but it's much better than the antibody test. Which foods to eat and which foods not to eat. And that was popularized by these two fellows, the D'Adamo father and son team. And then 15 years later, it was popularized by, of all people, a cardiovascular surgeon from Palm Springs, California. Bringing this science, the awareness of this science back to the public eye. So we could say, hey, listen, this is really the thing you can count on. And you can know how to do this with some very simple testing. You don't have to spend a lot of money 3 times every year to know.
It's funny. That's another source of outsourcing, right? So you said eat right for your blood type. I have some, I worked with people over the past decade who might try it on for size. They say it feels good until it doesn't work anymore. Like any other diet, right? It feels good until it doesn't. But I remember for me, I think according to that book, I should be eating steak or animal protein for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which is like the antithesis of what makes me feel good, right? So am I going to outsource to this book and what media is telling me to do? Or am I going to trust my body and what feels good? This is a big problem that's happening out there. And I don't know about you, but with that food sensitivity testing, how often have you had someone come back who has a sensitivity to broccoli and carrots and wild salmon, or these real whole foods that potentially are the result of just them including them in their diet pretty consistently?
Well, yeah. So I should lay this premise. I'm a practicing physician for 45 years, and what I learned very early in my career is that there's no better lab test than how do you feel.
I love it.
How do you feel is the best lab test we have. And how do you feel when you eat that? Or how do you feel when you don't eat that? Those are more accurate lab tests than any laboratory technician or technologist can produce for us.
Absolutely.
Now, there are some lab tests that we can't feel. We can't feel our blood count unless maybe we can. If we're anemic, we can get tired. But there are some lab tests that have a purpose, looking more deeply into us. But in this conversation about food sensitivities, how do you feel? Do you start to clear your throat in the middle of a meal? Do you feel bloated or a little distended after you eat that particular food? Do you feel fine and refreshed and invigorated by the foods that you just ate? You can do it without a venipuncture, without any kind of a sample. You can do it yourself. And of course, whole foods, organically grown whenever you can access them, prepared at home, fresh from the marketplace, is going to be the pattern for a healthy diet. I was thinking about what are the 3 things that people should really focus on to live their longest possible life and have the longest health span as well as the longest lifespan. It's not peptides or hormone replacement. It's not hyperbaric oxygen. It's not stem cell therapy. It's diet, exercise, and sleep. It makes up 80% it controls 80% of the acceleration or deceleration of the aging process. And the
Absolutely.
4th cornerstone in that foundation, if diet, exercise, and sleep are cornerstones of your foundation, the 4th cornerstone is perspective. What's your view of yourself in the world? And what have you accomplished, and what would you still like to do? So many people that I see worked so hard to become busy, and now busy means stress. And they work so hard to have this tremendous stress in their life. And I tell them, busy is what you want it to be. It's not a stressor. You shouldn't stress over busy. You should be very glad you're busy. No, you have to control your time and control your busyness and control your mind and its relationship to it. But diet, exercise, sleep, perspective is the foundation for our body's life. There's a little different superstructure for the mind. And of course, we all live in our mind until our body compels us to pay attention to it. The mind is dependent upon an inseparable interaction among hormones, neurochemicals, and proteins. And that inseparable interaction among them is what really keeps us engaged in life. So we've got to pay attention to those things. I mean, hormones are important, neurochemistry is important, immune chemistry is important. But I may have over-answered the question.
Oh, I love it. There's so much wisdom in that. When we even think that's a hard truth, we work so hard to claim the stress that we have. Ouch. It's very true. And yet, a lot of people don't think, and I really hope our listeners take away the fact that your state of being every single day, how you wake up, your energy, your mood is what's going to drive your decision making. Whether you're going to eat like you love yourself or eat like you're surviving because you need a quick fix of energy because you're so tired. And tell me about in your practice, I find myself having to re-educate what wellness actually means. I feel like so many wellness trends today are fear-based. So you mentioned peptides and hormones and aging well, and even the supplement industry, right? It's like, oh, you better be taking these things or else. Instead of the aspect, these could be modalities that may be great for some people and not others. But if you don't have the foundations right, it's not going to work. Nothing's going to work.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And, that's why I spoke to that issue of foundational behaviors. The three most important things, what are the three most potent anti-aging strategies? It's what you eat, how well you move, and how well you rest. I think that fear is a very important thing to notice and understand. We all admit to being human beings, but we never think about how much time we spend in human endeavor and how much time we spend just being. And being gets greatly ignored. I have thought about this extensively, and I believe that being is where love resides, and that every expression, feeling, or emotion that we attach to love comes from our being. I think that fear resides in human. Fear has no other place in the universe but for humans. It's not purposeful anywhere else but here. And I will acknowledge that it is purposeful. Each time I'm on my phone and not paying attention, I step off the curb and a car or a bicycle or something goes by that I almost got in the way of. I think, you should have jumped back. I mean, fear should have brought you back. So I think fear has a purpose, but it has a very limited purpose. And it should not, permeate our regular thinking or positive strategies. We shouldn't take a vitamin because we fear the consequence of not taking it. We should take a vitamin because it's going to help us have a better day. It's going to help us be better people. And anything that helps that human be better at what he or she does, I think is worthwhile.
That art of being, which is so beautiful, especially in the practice of medicine, which I would say the majority of medical doctors don't speak to, but you do. You've often said that personalized medicine requires creativity, not just protocols. So to expand on that, do you have a story perhaps where, an unconventional or intuitive approach really helped you solve a case when standard medicine has failed?
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. I have many. And, I'm thinking about the different subjects about, which case? Was this a case in which a woman came to me and said, hey, I've got these very conflicting reports on my mammogram. And, I don't know which path I should take or what I should do. I've got this doctor telling me this and this doctor telling me this, and then I've got my sister-in-law who tells me this, and I just don't know what to do. And what we did was a practice of reducing the fear of what the possibility out of the outcome was. So we we acknowledged that, said, okay, we're not going to be fearful of what the outcome is, in order to listen more carefully to myself. And then we did an exercise where I was not present, but I said, put your hand where you're being told this is, and ask yourself the question, of what to do for this, how to take care of this, not how to get rid of this, or how to destroy this, but how do you care for this? This is you. It's a part of you. Whether it's an aberrant part of you and it's become a tumor and it's now threatening the rest of you, or whether it's a collaborative part of you, just relax and ask yourself what this is about, and ask yourself, what direction do you take? How do you do this? And when she did that, she had a very clear idea of what she should do, and once she had that clear idea, she followed that path. It gave her the diagnosis, and it spared her a great deal of angst, agony, and trauma. Um, there are other case examples, but I think that,
Yeah, that's a powerful one.
yeah, that one speaks to the issue of, okay, sometimes we need to be our own physician and take advice from that ancient Greek axiom of physician, know thyself.
Yes.
Sometimes we have to pay attention to ourselves, but often our fears get in the way of communicating with ourselves.
Hmm. And science too, right? Science gets in the way.
Oh,
What you're speaking to, I feel like, Eastern medicine is known for centuries about the power of tuning into your energetic body, your emotional body, your spiritual body, and we're still waiting for the science to validate it before it can become part of mainstream practice. So sharing stories like that, especially from people trained at your level, is really so powerful, especially because we're living at a day and age where, going back to the stress and the fear, fatigue, burnout, these are all happening at epidemic levels now. And I think the Western approach and what we're being taught through media and, being online is to look for prescriptions or medications outside of sleep, outside of tuning into your sense of self. At your clinic, are there other interventions that you look at to really restore one's energy again in recovery?
yeah. Earlier I mentioned, in the technology question, red light
Yes.
therapy and PEMF mats. We debated over, the usefulness and purpose of a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, because we do see that it has a great deal of benefit. But we didn't, invest in that and promote that, because we thought that the centers, in our community were doing a better job of it than we could do.
Yeah.
So there's no sense in trying to do a better job than someone you see doing a good job. But we do those therapies. We have also, there's a very sort of controversial and surprising area of medicine that has grown up very quietly, especially because of its controversial nature, but it's grown very quietly over the last 20 years. And it's described as psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. And the portion of psychedelic assisted psychotherapy that all the government regulatory agencies and all of the medical boards have approved is ketamine therapy.
Mhm.
And what we saw was that people whose attention was brought to the role that anxiety plays in their life, the role that depression plays in their life, the role that self-doubt plays in their life, might be helped by those exploratory experiences under the direction of a skilled, trained clinical psychologist. Not at home and not at the concert or the club, but in a controlled medical environment in which the medicine is being utilized for therapeutic benefit and integrative conversations occur with a skilled and experienced person afterward. So we've adopted that ketamine therapy, which we've done on a number of clients. And we see very profound results in people in having it reduce people's anxiety levels.
It's so powerful. Yeah.
Yes. Ketamine is it's not considered a psychedelic drug, it's dissociative. And what dissociation means is it separates you from your worries. And it gives you an opportunity to experience yourself without those worries. And often, the realization afterward is, I'm okay. When going into it, you would only say, I'm okay on an intellectual level. You wouldn't say, I'm okay on an emotional level. But after having that experience of, let me set all the things I think are my troubles aside, and let me just exist here in my state of being for 30 minutes or an hour. And let me see what is that like to be me? What is it like to be me without the burdens? And I am still me. And when you emerge from that therapeutic environment, especially with the guidance of a good clinical psychologist in bringing this out and bringing the realizations to significance, you feel a lot better about yourself and you realize, oh, you know what? I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. I can do it.
It's really powerful. And I think that you called on something that's really important as a distinguisher there, especially living in a place like LA where a lot of medicine ceremonies are popping up, whether people are doing, their own ceremonies at home or at the club, like you said. The difference is that these are trained physicians who focus on integration afterwards. So for a lot of people, I know for a lot of my male clients specifically, to have that glimpse of what it's like to experience your true self without the worries, without the stressors, without the burdens, the trauma, the background, anything that's happened to you, brings a sense of freedom. But then jumping back into reality where that doesn't exist anymore can be really harsh for a lot of people. And this is where a trained physician can step in and help you acclimate and really help you continue that path of dissociation into a new reality, which is really, really powerful. And I didn't know that that was part of your clinics. This is, I think it's something that's going to continue to be a really powerful form of healing in the future.
Yes, I agree. I think it was very unfortunate that another medicine that's associated with this, but not a psychedelic drug, MDMA, which in social settings and on social media is referred to as either ecstasy or Molly. Pure MDMA, and we don't know when someone says ecstasy, when someone says Molly, we don't know what that substance is actually, and these days it can be very dangerous. But pure MDMA is another agent that can put us in touch with that core of being, and it puts us in touch with the core of being that is perhaps less aware and much more loving, much more, feeling.
Yeah.
And it doesn't dissolve our sense of awareness. We're still ourselves, but we feel this, overwhelming sensation or connection to the love that resides within us, in our being.
Yeah.
It was very unfortunate that it was up for FDA approval last year. And it didn't get approved because of some of the irregularities in the studies that were done to support it. But look, that movement is 20 years old, and it has very substantial science behind it. So the guides of that movement are going to go back through those MDMA experiments and repeat them. It will delay our access to it by 2 or 3 years, but it's coming. And so many of your listeners have 20, 30, 40 years to go.
Yeah.
So many of your listeners are not halfway yet. And the halfway mark, whatever they would designate that to be, whether they would think that halfway was 45 or 50 or 50, whatever they would think is halfway, in that expanse of time is not going to be halfway.
Yeah. That's
They're,
exciting.
yes, it's very exciting. There are going to be substantial improvements in our lives and in our abilities. And there are also going to be some substantial challenges.
Of course. Yeah.
But as long as we keep improving ourselves and remain true to ourselves, we're going to be able to manage them.
I think what's so powerful about these therapies is I see them as an act of remembering. You're peeling back all of the layers to remember what it feels like to just be pure love, pure acceptance, and who you can become in those moments with freedom, with all the clutter and the trash. And it's funny how often in wellness I'm listening to my clients and they're blaming their partner, they're blaming their jobs, they're blaming society, when it's like it's an inside job. It's all in here. So to have those moments of freedom, gosh, especially with a guided practitioner who can help you kind of see that truth, it's the rewards are endless. Yeah, they continue to pay off. So it's exciting.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And to punctuate the conversation about this, that process of integration creates new nerve connections.
Yes.
That help you keep that feeling going forward, help you keep that memory and that recollect the feeling of that memory of, you know what, I am okay. Everything is okay. I really am in love with all of this. This is all going to be all right. I'm going to be able to manage it. I can do it. It helps you keep and maintain that feeling where without integration, it's just an experience that, it fades and you remember it, but you don't have a sensory memory of it. With integration, you take away the sensory memory.
What a joy to be speaking to you about a perspective like this, to really just show like the multi-dimensional aspect of healing with your expertise. And here I thought we're just showing up to talk about root cause healing, but this is such a big part of that. It's so important to acknowledge all parts of ourselves. So let's bring this back into the physical body now that we've piqued the curiosity of everyone. And I can feel they're getting a sense of just understanding that emotional layer, their sense of spirit, their emotional bodies. When we tune into the physical body, you know, getting to your 40s, there's lots of physiological changes. Right now, there's so much fear again around muscle loss, around hormonal shifts, around insulin resistance as well. What would you say are the biggest roadblocks that somebody has to face as they age? And, what's your lens on all of these things that are now trending in the media? And how can we put a positive spin on it?
Yeah, I'm very clear on this. And I'm glad you brought it back into that, not only the physical body, but also that decade. What we know is that there's a great deal of physiologic decline between the ages of 45 and 55 in both men and women because of nature's hormonal abandonment. We are left on the curb by our hormones, and we really cannot afford to accept that fate. We can't afford to say, "Well, that's life, que sera. I'll be fine. My grandmother was fine." Believe me, your grandmother was not fine. She just was nice to you. But we really have to find another skilled, experienced, knowledgeable practitioner who understands bioidentical hormone replacement. And somewhere between 45 and 55, we have to face the fact that hormones are managers. They manage so many activities in our bodies. If we were a business and all the managers left, the business would collapse. And we have to think of it in that way. If we don't maintain the managers, our business, the business of our health, the business of our well-being is going to be severely constricted, if not collapse. So we've got to face hormone replacement therapy. Um, the the system that maintains our body is the immune system. In our tens, teens, and 20s, the immune system is our defense. It's our military. When we turn 30, the immune system becomes our civil service. It then oversees all the repairs, changes all the light bulbs, fills the potholes in the roads, or it doesn't, because it's distracted by your behaviors, or it's suppressed by your behaviors, and it doesn't do those things, and you wear out sooner, your health span is shortened. So hormones are intimately involved in managing immune system reactions. We know that people who take bioidentical hormone replacement in that decade have far lower levels of inflammation. They have better cancer surveillance. One of the main reasons why women are scared to take bioidentical hormones is because they've been told by their doctors that taking estrogen, supplemental estrogen, will increase their risk of breast cancer. And it is absolutely opposite. Taking estrogen in the decade that we're talking about will help reduce your risk of breast cancer. And I won't, cite the studies and talk about the medical literature. It's there. Believe me. The apocrypha, even that occurs, the common beliefs, even that occurs in our voice by some of our medical practitioners, are just not true. Bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, when appropriately prescribed in that decade, makes all the difference in the world, not only in that 10 years, but also the rest of the years you're going to live. So that's very important.
Mm-hmm. Don't you feel, HRT, we're now talking about it everywhere. Clinics that weren't providing it before are now providing it. Don't you think it's a social responsibility for practitioners who are prescribing hormone replacement therapy to also be addressing gut health and gut health optimization?
Of course. The gut is the universe within.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make a very strong case, if you look into this in detail, you can make a very strong case on the fact that each of us as a person lives on the outside of the gut, not that the population of the gut lives within us. They're bigger than we are. So gut health is of primary importance.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're talking about the integration of one human being. So half the immune system is stationed in the gastrointestinal tract. The things that we eat and the things that we swallow, put into our bodies, the things that we apply to our skin, they're going to have an influence on how that immune system recognizes friendly things and how it mistakes pathogens, either allowing pathogens to come in or thinking that food or something else we've swallowed that is not pathogenic at all needs to be attacked. So gut health is of primary importance. And, the reason that you may have associated with that same decade of 45 to 55 is that if you allow hormones to decline, then the immune system gets very agitated. It gets very aggressive. And the first place it's going to encounter antigens is in the gastrointestinal tract. So you're going to become an irritable bowel syndrome patient, along with your, perimenopausal symptoms. This is a disaster.
Yeah.
And when you could have easily avoided. Very, very important. Gut health is very important.
Yeah. And I say this because, most of our audience is familiar with inflammation. When speaking about aging and aging well through the lens of hormones, we also know that inflammation is the silent accelerator of aging. And in today's world, chronic inflammation drives nearly every degenerative disease as we age. So, what are some common symptoms then do you recommend to patients to tuning into as early signs of inflammation, maybe before looking at lab markers or HSCRP labs or any other interventions?
Oh, sure. I mean, when you do laboratory tests to look at inflammation, what you're really doing is testing what's the degree, like how bad is it? I mean, you don't need a laboratory test to know you're inflamed. Inflammation causes the symptoms that you have. One of the common mistakes is that we think that when we're sick with a flu or a cold, that the virus is causing the symptoms. They're not. It's the immune system's response to the virus that's causing the symptoms. The virus wouldn't cause any symptoms at all. And in fact, in immunosuppressed people, they get viruses and they don't feel sick. They just feel tired because they're immune suppressed. So what are the common symptoms? I would say that unexplained mood shift, you have to think about, brain inflammation, declining cognitive abilities. Like, I'm very surprised at the number of people in my practice in their 40s who tell me my memory's shot. I think, really, your memory's shot? Like,
Yeah.
this is pretty early. You're only 46 years old, or you're only 41 years old. How can that be? But they're perceiving a difference in their abilities from a decade prior. So memory problems, mood problems, recurring aches or pains. Like, I keep getting a stiff neck over here. That's an inflammatory process. And it may not be local to your stiff neck. It may be you have systemically become so inflamed that now the healing and repair process of your neck actually hurts. Whereas it was healing and repairing itself last year or the year before when you weren't this way, and you weren't feeling it. I keep getting headaches now. I get headaches around the time of my menstrual cycle. I get headaches now, as soon as the weather changes. That's inflammation. Of course, we all know that when our knee is sore and swollen, and we can't walk, we have limping. That's an inflammatory reaction, but that's a gross example of it. Rashes, changes in your skin. These are markers of inflammation. So pretty much anything that you feel that is a departure from how well you felt earlier is probably involves inflammation in some way or another.
I love that you just mentioned subtle symptoms and you took it to acute symptoms. And I'm pretty sure most of our listeners, we tend to not pay attention until it's something very acute. And that's unfortunate because I think that our bodies are constantly sending us these subtle signs of things not functioning well. How many of our listeners identify with neck and shoulder pain? And then in their mid 40s is like, well, I've had it for so long. I'm so used to it being normal, when it's not actually normal, right? And in Ayurveda, what I actually loved is like when you have to work upstream, right? If you feel a lot of those symptoms upstream, go back downstream to see where they could have potentially come from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about aging well, and there's a lot of testing that's now happening around reversing your biological age. So in that, we're addressing our inflammation, and you often speak to the fact that whatever gets measured gets mastered, I think is what you said.
Yeah.
So when people are tracking their longevity progress, what are you looking for? What is your team coaching on? We talked about gut healing and hormones, but are there more specific things like perhaps fasting or looking at that HSCRP marker or strength tests or anything like that?
Yes, there are. And, there are some very sophisticated tests that we do that measure different aspects of aging. Well, we probably don't have time to talk about them today, but we might meet again and talk about these things. But our chromosomes change, so we have less access to genes, fewer genes as we get older. We don't want those changes to occur because the diminishing access to our own genes makes us less adaptable. So we want to keep the same shape chromosomes that we had when we were younger, so we could have access to all of those different genes where we didn't need them. We have organ decline, and if you think about it, all of our organs don't age at the same pace. If all our organs age at the same pace, then they would all get sick at one time. You wouldn't have one person with kidney disease, one person with liver disease, one person with anemia. So the organ that is most vulnerable is going to give us our disease. It's going to show up with our disease diagnosis. So we have ways to measure organ age. We have functional testing. it sounds fundamental and silly, but grip strength
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
is actually a very good predictor. And we do all of these tests here, but you know, lifespan is no longer unique. There are, there have to be thousands of clinics that have some level of wellness program or longevity program incorporated into their practices. There's got to be thousands of them now. And we have the privilege of serving, a very accomplished group of people. So we have the privilege of affording these different tests. But as I say, there's a very good test is how well do I feel? And
Yeah.
asking yourself, okay, why am I not feeling well today? Is it gut health? Is it hormonal imbalance? Is it the consequence of being too sedentary? Is my sleep not restorative? And we can measure those things by just asking ourselves the questions. If we want more details, we can buy devices for relatively affordable prices that can give us some of those details. And if we really want to escalate to this level, we can go see a medical practitioner who can do some tests and tell us more.
You actually answered my next question. You walked right into exactly what I wanted you to say, which was speaking about the variety of tests that exist. Looking at these specific tests in their individual form is not going to be a predictor of how well you're going to age. If you have amazing grip strength, that's not enough. If you're going to look at perhaps your telomere test, I think that's even outdated right now. It's not good enough. You have to look at a whole picture, in terms of the diversity that you are. And I think there's also a component, and I'm curious with you if you agree, not accepting the fate of aging poorly, not accepting the fate that despite the doom and gloom that we see in the media around aging, that has to happen to you. And I'm curious at your clinics, what type of coaching do you guys have? What's something that you've seen over the years to really support patients in staying consistent enough to see lasting transformation?
Oh, absolutely. So we have a team that attends to each of our individual patients. There's the physician, a physician assistant, a nutritionist, and a client care coordinator. And the client care coordinators are probably the best. They're probably the most likely health coaches from a standpoint of they hear from the nutritionist, the physician assistant, or the physician what we need to reinforce the client to do. And so the client care coordinator will be in touch with that person. They'll know if they prefer text over email. They'll know if they prefer email over phone calls. They'll know what times are best to get that person's attention. And we have, of course, a very detailed program of how we follow up with each individual. And the reason that we're following up with those individuals is because we know it's very hard for a person to change their behavior, especially adopt a challenging behavior like I'm going to start working out or I'm going to stop eating sugar. We know it's very difficult to really implement those. And you're going to need another person coaching you and, cheering for you and encouraging you to do that. And that's usually the client care coordinator and nutritionist role when it comes to the food stuff. It's the client care coordinator and the physician assistant role when it comes to the behavioral stuff. Hey, you were supposed to rock your bedtime back 15 minutes a week. This should be your third week. You should be going to bed at 10 instead of 10:45. Have you been doing that? What's in the way? How come? Why aren't you not? Okay, let's try again. It's about this constant contact. It's as you said earlier, a health partnership. It's a health and wellness collaboration. And it doesn't take a village. It just takes a few people who are interested and motivated to remain in touch with you. And once you see that they're interested, you start doing it for them. When actually you're going to benefit, it's going to be done for you, but you start doing it so you get to answer their questions. Yeah, I worked out. Yeah, I went. Yeah, I went to bed at 10 o'clock. Yeah, I feel better. I've been taking the vitamins. Um, we see how often people order nutritional supplements, and we realize, well, that's because they're not, if they just bought 30 days of nutritional supplements and they're calling for more after 60 days, they only took it half the time. And our team will notice that and say, you know what? Vitamin D is really important to resist viral infection. We're coming into the winter season. You got to take that vitamin D. You got to take those immune system support supplements. You got to take that CoQ10. So that's, that's the the obvious secret of lifespan is looking at people as honoring, being so honored by people trusting us with what they may or may not know is their greatest asset. And that is their health, their body, and their well-being. And they're coming here to trust us with that. And if they're coming here to trust us with that, we have to do everything we possibly can to help them optimize that situation.
What a concept. Going to your doctor's office and feeling like you've got a partner in your lifespan. Hey, you've got a perfect name to your clinic. So let's maybe kind of wrap this up for people who are really intrigued and obviously very excited about what you have brought to the table as a practitioner into your lifespan clinics. But maybe perhaps they're not ready or have access to be able to work with you yet. What are 2 or 3 steps that they can take right now to start creating their own longevity strategy?
Sure. Whole foods, organically grown, freshly prepared at home, adequate hydration. You got to count your beverages, but if it's not caffeinated, you should have about 64 ounces. And if it's caffeinated, you may need 84 to 90. If you're trying to lose weight, make sure that you don't lose weight by not eating protein. Yes, you can eat a lot of vegetables, and you should. You should have been doing that anyway. But eat the vegetables, but make sure you get some protein. At least a third of your body weight in grams. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you should get at least 30 grams, and then you can go up. And I know that there are other recommendations much more ambitious. Yes, if you're working out, you're trying to build muscle, yes, more. But okay, do those things. The Los Angeles Lakers many years ago paid the Stanford Sleep Center to test their people and to tell them, how much sleep do I need to completely repair myself or restore myself? The answer was 7 hours and 20 minutes. Use the Lakers. The Lakers paid $2 million for that. I mean, you can use the information that they paid $2 million for. Just figure it out. If you say, oh, I don't need that much sleep, good, then sleep 7 hours. But don't sleep 5.5. You got to move. You don't have to exercise. You don't have to work out. I talked to a client yesterday who comes home from a busy job, and every day her husband watches their newborn for 40 minutes while she walks. And that's all she does is walk. She doesn't have a dog, so it's not that kind of a responsibility. There's no obligation. She said, you know what? I look at the foliage. I look at the flowers. I notice the birds. I look at the houses and how they've changed or not changed. I'm always interested in the people and how she just walks. So we're humans. We have 2 legs. We're bipedal. Go walk. So food, exercise, sleep, and perspective, that, 5 minutes of thinking about the things for which you're grateful will calm you down so much, both at the beginning and the end of the day. And it's the prayer that every denomination can say. And that prayer will put you in touch with the being part of your formula of human and being. And that will restore you.
I can't even tell you how refreshing it is to speak to somebody who's been in this as long as you have, who is focusing on an attainable and sustainable method for health, longevity, and the fact that you've included happiness in all of this makes me so happy. And I'm so grateful that you've included this focus on personalization and the work that you do. I hope everyone goes and just checks out the resources on your website as well. There's lots of information with you online where you give a ton of education. To wrap things up, can you tell me, what are you most excited about in the world of medicine in the future?
I'm really excited about our ability to increase energy as we age.
Mm.
There's a little capsule inside our cells. In fact, there are many, many, many of these little capsules inside our cells that are actually little power generators, the power plants. And we're figuring out not only how to restore the health and activity of the power plants, but we're also figuring out how to introduce more power plants into each of the cells. And that little power plant is called the mitochondria. And as a group, they're the mitochondrion. And there's a big push now to figure out how to give us more energy. And the reason for that is that if we had more energy, we could fix more of the things that wear out.
Yeah.
If we could fix more of the things that wear out, we wouldn't wear out so soon. We would be much more functional. We would push disease further and further into the lifespan so that we didn't encounter it in our 40s, 50s, or 60s. We wouldn't encounter it until our 90s, hundreds and hundreds and tens. And I'm not sure we'd be so ready to encounter it then, or we still would.
Yeah.
But that's really an interesting area for me, is to think about increasing someone's energy, reducing inflammation, increasing energy. What a gift that would be.
What a gift. Yes, please. We'll all sign up for that. And I'm curious, are you on a PEMF mat every day?
Every other day.
Every other day. I love it. Okay. Dr. Chris Renna, thank you so much. It's such an honor to know you. Thank you so much for your time and your insight.
It was a pleasure. I hope your listeners all benefit.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye bye now.